The wine dripped slowly from Amara's uniform, each drop hitting the marble floor like a countdown. She stood perfectly still in the center of the grand ballroom, surrounded by silence so thick it felt like walls closing in. Celeste Van Doren circled her slowly, heels clicking like a predator measuring its prey. Her diamond necklace caught the chandelier light as she leaned close, her perfume expensive and suffocating. "You think you're special?" Celeste's voice was smooth as silk and sharp as glass. "You think because you work hard you matter? Let me remind you of something." She paused, lips curling into a cold smile. "You're nothing but hired help." The other staff members stood frozen near the walls, eyes down, praying they weren't next. But Amara didn't flinch. Her hands stayed at her sides. Her breathing stayed calm. She looked straight ahead, not at Celeste, not at the floor, just forward. Steady. Unbroken. And that made Celeste even angrier. Have you ever worked for someone who made you feel invisible? Someone who treated kindness like a crime? Someone who smiled while they crushed you just because they could? In the Hale mansion, everyone knew one rule: fear the fiancé more than the billionaire. Victor Hale owned half the city. His name opened doors, closed deals, built empires. But inside his own home, it wasn't his word that mattered most. It was hers. Celeste Van Doren was beautiful, rich, and cruel in ways that left no bruises you could see. Staff members quit after days. Some left crying in their cars. Others simply vanished without goodbye, too broken to explain. No one ever challenged her. No one ever looked her in the eye. No one dared. Until Amara Cole walked through those golden doors. She wasn't supposed to be different. She was just another maid. Another face in uniform. Another person Celeste could control. But there was something Celeste didn't know. Amara had survived far worse than a rich woman's cruelty. She had buried parents, raised a brother, fought poverty with her bare hands. She had learned long ago that dignity isn't something people give you. It's something you refuse to lose. So when Celeste circled her like a shark, Amara stood still. When Celeste mocked her, Amara stayed silent. And when Celeste tried to break her, Amara did something no one in that mansion had ever done. She stayed. But what happens when the one person everyone underestimates refuses to break? What happens when silence becomes the loudest weapon? What happens when a maid discovers a secret so dangerous it could destroy the most powerful man in the city or save him? If you've ever felt underestimated, this story is for you. Drop a comment and let me know, have you ever stood up to someone everyone else feared? Amara Cole wasn't born into softness. She grew up in the kind of neighborhood where streetlights flickered more than they shined, where sirens were lullabies, and where survival wasn't a choice, it was the only option. Her parents died in a car accident when she was 16. One moment she was a girl worrying about homework. The next, she was signing papers at a funeral home, trying to figure out how to keep the lights on. Her younger brother, Marcus, was only 10. There was no money, no insurance, no family who could help. Just two kids and a world that didn't care if they made it or not. So Amara worked. She took double shifts at a diner where the coffee was weak and the customers were rude. She cleaned offices at night when the city slept. She did laundry for neighbors, babysat for strangers, sold anything she could to make rent. Marcus never missed a meal. He never knew how close they came to losing everything. Amara made sure of that. By the time she turned 23, her hands were rough, her back ached, and her dreams had shrunk to something small and realistic: stability. A safe place. Enough money so Marcus could go to college and become something more than she ever could. She didn't dream of mansions or luxury. She dreamed of not being afraid when the bills came. That's why when she saw the job posting, *housekeeper needed for private estate, competitive pay, room and board available *, she applied immediately. She didn't know she was walking into a battlefield. Victor Hale was a name everyone knew. Self-made billionaire. Hotels across 3 continents. Oil contracts that shaped economies. A face on magazine covers with headlines like *the man who built an empire. *. But inside his massive estate, behind the iron gates and marble columns, Victor was just a man. A lonely one. He had money, yes. Power, absolutely. But real connection? That was rare. His grandmother, Eloise Hale, was the only person who loved him for who he was, not what he could give. She was 87, sharp as ever, and lived in the east wing of the mansion. She was his anchor. Everyone else? Business partners. Socialites. People who smiled too wide and asked for favors too often. Victor had learned not to trust easily. And then there was Celeste. Celeste Van Doren came from the kind of wealth that didn't need to be earned. Old money. Generational power. Her last name opened doors before she even knocked. She was stunning, the kind of beauty that turned heads and stopped conversations. Tall, elegant, always dressed like she was about to attend a gala, even at breakfast. But beauty was her armor and cruelty was her weapon. She treated people like objects. Staff members were furniture, useful when needed, invisible when not. She didn't learn their names. She didn't care about their lives. To Celeste, kindness was weakness. Respect was earned through fear. The mansion staff lived in terror of her moods. One wrong word, one small mistake, and you were gone. She fired people with a smile, ruined reputations with a phone call, and enjoyed every second of it. Even Victor didn't challenge her. He was too busy, too distracted, too blinded by her beauty and charm. In public, Celeste was the perfect fiancée, gracious, poised, adoring. In private, she was a storm no one could escape. Maids quit every week. Some left in tears, packing their bags in the middle of the night. Others just stopped showing up, too broken to explain. The few who stayed learned one rule fast: don't look Celeste in the eye, don't speak unless spoken to, and never, ever stand out. The mansion was beautiful, chandeliers like frozen stars, gardens that stretched like dreams, rooms that echoed with wealth. But it was also a prison. And Celeste was the warden. Until Amara arrived. She wasn't looking for a fight. She wasn't trying to be brave. She just needed the job. But sometimes, courage isn't a choice you make. Sometimes, it's who you already are. And Amara Cole had survived too much to bow down now. Amara's first morning at the Hale Mansion felt like stepping into a dream someone else was having. The entrance hall stretched higher than any building in her old neighborhood. Marble floors gleamed like frozen water. A crystal chandelier hung overhead, each piece catching light and throwing rainbows across the walls. Through tall windows, she could see gardens that rolled on forever, fountains, rose bushes, stone paths winding through greens so perfect it looked painted. It was the most beautiful place she'd ever seen, and the most afraid she'd ever felt. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Palmer, walked her through the halls quickly, heels clicking like a timer running out. She was older, gray-haired, and her face carried the exhaustion of someone who'd seen too much. "You'll start in the guest wing," Mrs. Palmer said quietly. "Stay efficient. Stay invisible." And most importantly, she stopped, turning to face Amara with eyes that held a warning. "Don't upset Miss Van Doren." Before Amara could ask what that meant, another maid passed by. Young, maybe 19. Her eyes met Amara's for just a second before she looked down fast, like even that was dangerous. In the servants' quarters, 3 other women whispered over tea. "New girl won't last a week," one said. The last one cried herself to sleep every night. Then just left. No goodbye. Nothing. Smart. Better to run than break. When they noticed Amara standing there, they went quiet. One of them, an older woman named Rosa, leaned forward. "Listen carefully," Rosa said, her voice low. "Don't look her in the eye. Don't speak unless she asks you a direct question. And whatever you do, don't cross Celeste Van Doren. She's not like us. She doesn't forgive. She doesn't forget." Amara nodded slowly, her stomach tightening. That afternoon, she met Victor Hale. He was in his office, sitting behind a desk covered in papers, phone pressed to his ear. He glanced up when Mrs. Palmer introduced Amara, gave a polite nod, and returned to his call. "Yes, I understand. Move the Singapore meeting to Thursday." He was handsome in a distant way, sharp suit, tired eyes, the kind of face that had smiled more in the past than it did now. He didn't look cruel. Just unreachable. Amara stood there for a moment longer, then followed Mrs. Palmer out. Victor Hale barely noticed her. But Celeste? Celeste noticed everything. She swept into the main hallway an hour later like a storm given human form. Tall. Elegant. Wearing a white dress that probably cost more than Amara's entire year of rent. Her heels were red, sharp, deliberate. Her hair fell in perfect waves. Diamonds glittered at her throat. She was breathtaking. And terrifying. Celeste's eyes landed on Amara immediately. She stopped mid-step, tilting her head slightly, studying her the way someone might inspect a stain on expensive fabric. "You're the new one?" Celeste's voice was smooth, almost amused. "Yes, ma'am," Amara said. Celeste walked closer, circling slowly. Her perfume was heavy roses and something bitter underneath. Let's see how long you last." She didn't wait for a response. "I want the entire East Wing scrubbed by noon. Floors, windows, baseboards. Everything." Amara blinked. The East Wing had 12 rooms. And after that, Celeste continued, her smile growing sharper, "Polish all the silver in the dining hall. I'm hosting guests tonight. It needs to shine." The silver was already polished. Amara had seen it that morning. "Of course, ma'am." Celeste leaned in close, her breath warm against Amara's ear. "Oh, and one more thing. I like my tea at exactly 170 degrees. Not hotter. Not cooler. Think you can manage that?" Amara's jaw tightened, but her voice stayed calm. "I'll do my best." "Your best." Celeste laughed softly. "Let's hope that's enough." She walked away, heels clicking like a countdown. The other maids avoided Amara's eyes as she started scrubbing. Rosa passed by once and whispered without stopping, "She's testing you." "She always does." Amara's knees ached. Her hands turned red from the cleaning solution. The East Wing seemed endless. But she didn't cry. She didn't complain. She worked. When Celeste walked by an hour later and saw Amara still scrubbing, still steady, something flickered across her face. Surprise. Then something colder. Annoyance. "Still here," Celeste murmured. "Interesting." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. And Amara realized something right then, kneeling on that perfect marble floor. Celeste didn't just want obedience. She wanted surrender. And Amara wasn't going to give it to her. The next 2 weeks became a battle Amara never asked for. Celeste's cruelty stopped being random. It became strategy. It started with the wine. Celeste hosted a dinner party on a Friday night. 20 guests. Crystal glasses. Laughter echoing off the walls. Amara was serving drinks, moving quietly between tables, trying to stay invisible. Then Celeste stood, glass in hand, and walked toward the white silk rug in the center of the room, the one worth more than Amara's childhood home. She locked eyes with Amara. And poured. Red wine splashed across the white silk like blood on snow. The room went silent. Celeste's face twisted into mock horror. "Oh no. Amara, you bumped my arm." Amara froze. I didn't. Clean it. Now." Celeste's voice was ice wrapped in silk. Amara knelt and scrubbed for 3 hours. The stain wouldn't come out. Her fingers were raw. Guests whispered and stared. Celeste watched from her chair, sipping wine, smiling. But Amara didn't cry. She scrubbed in silence. And when she finished, she stood, met Celeste's gaze for just a second, and walked away. That second was enough. Then came the mockery. A week later, Celeste had friends over for brunch. Amara was serving pastries when Celeste suddenly spoke, loud enough for the table to hear. "Amara, darling, where exactly did you learn to speak?" "A street corner." Laughter erupted around the table. Sharp. Cruel. Amara's hands tightened on the tray, but her face stayed calm. "I learned at school, ma'am," she said quietly. "School." Celeste repeated, eyebrows raised. "How quaint." More laughter. One of the guests, a woman dripping in pearls, leaned forward. "Celeste, you're terrible." "I'm honest," Celeste corrected, eyes still on Amara. "Aren't I Amara?" Amara didn't answer. She set down the tray, refilled the coffee, and left the room. But she didn't lower her eyes. And Celeste noticed. Then Celeste crossed a line. She walked into Victor's office one afternoon, voice dripping with concern. Victor, darling, I hate to say this, but I think we have a problem. He looked up from his laptop. What kind of problem? The new maid. Amara. Celeste sighed dramatically. I'm missing a bracelet. Diamond. The one you gave me last Christmas. Victor's face went serious. You think she took it? I don't want to believe it, but it was in my room this morning. She was cleaning. And now it's gone. Victor called Amara to his office. She stood in front of his desk, heart pounding, while Celeste watched from the corner, arms crossed, smiling like a cat with a trapped mouse. Amara, Victor said carefully, a bracelet is missing. Do you know anything about it? No, sir, Amara said, voice steady despite the fear. I cleaned Miss Van Doren's room this morning, but I didn't take anything. She's lying, Celeste said softly. I'm not, Amara replied, looking straight at Victor. Check the cameras. Victor paused. Then he picked up his phone and called security. 10 minutes later, the footage was clear. Amara had cleaned the room. She hadn't touched the jewelry box. Celeste had moved the bracelet herself, hidden it in a drawer. After Amara left, Victor's jaw tightened. He said nothing to Celeste in front of Amara, but his eyes turned cold. You can go, Amara, he said quietly. As Amara left, she caught Celeste's expression. Rage. Pure, boiling rage. But something else was happening. The other staff started watching Amara differently. She didn't gossip. Didn't complain. When Rosa spilled soup in the kitchen, Amara helped clean it without being asked. When the gardener's son got sick, Amara covered his mother's shift. She treated everyone with respect. Even Celeste. And Victor noticed. He started seeing Amara around the house more. Not because she was louder, but because she was steady. He saw her reading to his grandmother, Eloise, in the library. Saw her fix a broken lamp in the hallway without reporting it. Saw how the house felt, quieter, calmer. One evening, he found her in the garden, sitting on a bench, looking at the stars. Do you miss it? He asked. She looked up surprised. Miss what, sir? Home. Your old life. She thought about it. I miss my brother. But this, she gestured to the mansion. This is for him. Victor sat down beside her. What's his name? Marcus. They talked. About books. About loneliness. About how success doesn't always feel like winning. For the first time in years, Victor felt seen. And Celeste saw it too. Her cruelty sharpened into something more dangerous. She started watching Amara like a predator watches prey. Setting traps. Waiting. Amara is refusing to break, but Celeste is getting dangerous. What would you do in her position? Comment below. Would you stay silent or fight back? Asterisk asterisk. It was nearly midnight when Amara finished cleaning the west hallway. Her feet ached. Her arms felt heavy. The mansion was silent except for the distant hum of the heating system and the soft tick of the grandfather clock in the entrance hall. She was heading back to the servants' quarters when she noticed a sliver of light coming from Victor's study. The door was cracked open. Voices drifted out. Low. Careful. Amara slowed. She knew she should keep walking. Mind her business. Stay invisible like everyone told her. But something in the tone stopped her. Celeste's voice. And another, male, unfamiliar, cold as winter steel. Amara's pulse quickened. She moved closer, pressing herself against the wall, barely breathing. The wedding is in 6 weeks, Celeste said. After that, the company transfers partially to me. Victor trusts me. He won't see it coming. Amara's stomach dropped. The man's voice followed, calm and calculated. And the forged documents? Already signed by his lawyer, Celeste replied smoothly. Victor's too distracted to notice the fine print. Once we're married, we liquidate the oil contracts, sell the hotels, and move everything offshore. By the time he realizes what happened, we'll be gone. He'll be ruined. Silence. Then Celeste laughed. Soft. Cruel. He thinks I love him. Pathetic, isn't it? Amara's heart pounded so hard she thought they'd hear it. Her hands went cold. Her mind raced. Victor was being destroyed. By the woman he was about to marry. She needed to move. To get away. To think. She took a step back. Her shoes scraped the floor. The voices stopped. "Did you hear that?" the man asked sharply. Amara's breath caught. She didn't think. She ran. Down the hallway, around the corner, past the kitchen, not stopping until she reached her small room in the servants' wing. She locked the door, pressed her back against it, and tried to steady her breathing. Her hands were shaking. She'd heard everything. And if Celeste knew. The next morning, Amara was chopping vegetables in the kitchen when the door swung open. Celeste. Alone. The other staff seemed to sense danger. They disappeared quickly, leaving Amara by herself. Celeste walked slowly across the tile floor, heels clicking softly. She stopped on the other side of the counter, hands folded, face calm. Too calm. "You were near the study last night, weren't you?" Amara kept her hands steady on the knife. "I was cleaning, ma'am." "Cleaning." Celeste repeated the word like she was tasting it. "Interesting. Because I could have sworn I heard someone outside the door." "The hallway gets cleaned every night," Amara said quietly. Celeste leaned forward, elbows on the counter, eyes locked on Amara's. "Let me be very clear," she said, voice dropping to a whisper. "If you heard anything at all, and you repeat it to anyone, I will destroy you." Amara didn't move. "I will make sure you never work again. I will make sure your little brother loses his scholarship, his school, his future. I will bury you so deep, no one will even remember your name. Do you understand me?" Amara's hands trembled, but she forced her voice to stay even. "I understand." Celeste stared at her for a long moment. Then she smiled. Cold. Empty. "Good girl." She turned and walked out. Amara stood there, knife still in her hand, heart racing. She understood perfectly. Celeste had just threatened everything she loved. Marcus. Her job. Her future. But she also understood something else. She was holding a truth that could save Victor Hale or get her killed. And for the first time since arriving at the mansion, Amara wasn't sure she could stay silent. Because silence wasn't just protecting her anymore. It was protecting a monster. That night, Amara lay awake in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. She thought about running, packing her bag, disappearing before Celeste could make good on her threats. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Victor's face. Kind, lonely, trusting, blind to the knife aimed at his back. And she thought about Marcus, working hard in school, believing his sister was building them a better life. What kind of life would it be if it was built on cowardice? Amara turned onto her side, hands curled into fists. She was terrified. But she wasn't broken. Not yet. Amara didn't sleep for 3 nights. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard Celeste's laugh. Asterisk, he thinks I love him. Pathetic. Asterisk. She debated leaving. Just vanishing. Taking Marcus and running somewhere Celeste couldn't find them. But then she'd think about Victor, how kind he'd been when they talked in the garden. How he smiled when she told him about Marcus. How lonely he looked when he thought no one was watching. He didn't deserve this. And running wouldn't save him. It would only save her. Was that the person she wanted to be? She thought about Eloise. Victor's grandmother had pulled her aside a week ago in the library. Amara had been shelving books when the old woman spoke. "You're different from the others," Eloise had said, sharp eyes studying her. "I just try to do my job, ma'am." "No," Eloise shook her head. "You do more than that. You care. That's rare in a place like this." Amara didn't know what to say. Eloise leaned closer, voice soft but firm. "Real courage isn't fearlessness, child. It's doing what's right even when you're terrified." Those words echoed now. Amara sat up in bed, heart pounding. She made a decision. The next morning, Amara started gathering proof. Carefully, quietly. She wrote down everything she remembered from that night. The voices, the words, the timeline. She tucked the paper inside her pillowcase. Then she did something risky. She befriended Daniel, the estate's tech manager. He was young, quiet, spent most of his time maintaining the security system. "Hey, Daniel," Amara said casually one afternoon. "I've always wondered, do the cameras just record video or audio too?" He looked up from his computer. "Depends on the room. Some have audio. The study does. Mr. Hale wanted it for his business calls. Amara's pulse quickened. And how long are recordings kept? 30 days. Then they're archived. She smiled. That's smart. Why do you ask? Just curious, she said lightly. This place is so high-tech. It's impressive. He shrugged. I guess. But the seed was planted. That evening, Amara went to Eloise's room with tea. The old woman was sitting by the window, looking out at the gardens. Mrs. Hale, Amara said quietly, can I ask you something? You can ask me anything, child. Amara hesitated. Then she sat down. What do you think of Miss Van Doren? Eloise's expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened. Why do you ask? I want to understand. Eloise was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke, voice low. I've been watching that woman for months. She doesn't love my grandson. She loves his money. His power. I've seen the way she looks at him when she thinks no one's watching. Like he's a prize to be won. A contract to be signed. Amara's breath caught. Have you told him? He wouldn't believe me. He's lonely, Amara. Lonely people see what they want to see. But if there was proof. Eloise turned to her, eyes piercing. Do you have proof? Amara's hands tightened in her lap. I might. Eloise studied her carefully. Then she nodded. Then we need to be smart. Celeste is dangerous. If she suspects you know something, she'll destroy you without blinking. I know. Are you willing to risk that? Amara thought about Marcus. About Victor. About the kind of person she wanted to be. Yes, she said quietly. I am. Eloise reached out and took her hand. Then we do this together. But carefully. Very carefully. Over the next 2 weeks, something else happened. Victor started seeking Amara out more. Their conversations grew longer. Deeper. He told her about his childhood. About building his company from nothing. About how success felt emptier than he expected. Do you ever feel like people only see what you can give them? He asked one night. Every day, Amara said softly. He looked at her then, really looked, and something shifted. She wasn't just the maid anymore. She was someone who understood. And somewhere in those quiet conversations, in those stolen moments in the garden and the library, something neither of them planned began to bloom. Something forbidden. Something real. And it made everything more dangerous. Because now Amara wasn't just protecting a stranger. She was protecting someone she was starting to care about. The engagement gala was everything Celeste had planned. The mansion glowed like a jewel box. Crystal chandeliers blazed with light. Champagne flowed like water. Women in silk gowns laughed softly while men in tailored suits discussed business and power. The ballroom was packed with the city's elite, politicians, CEOs, old money families who'd known the Van Dorens for generations. And at the center of it all stood Celeste, radiant in a white gown that cost more than most people earned in a year. Diamonds dripped from her ears and throat. She looked like a queen. Victor stood beside her in a black tuxedo, smiling at guests, shaking hands. But Amara noticed something. His smile didn't reach his eyes. She moved through the crowd with a tray of champagne, invisible in her uniform, heart pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear it. Tonight. It had to be tonight. Celeste found her in the hallway near the kitchen. No one else around. She stepped in front of Amara, blocking her path, eyes glittering with something dark and victorious. Still here, Celeste said softly. I'm impressed. Or maybe just stupid. Amara kept her face calm. Celeste leaned in close, voice dropping to a whisper. After tonight, you're gone. I'll make sure of it. You'll be out on the street by morning and no one will remember your name. She smiled. Cold. Beautiful. Deadly. Enjoy your last night, Amara. Then she swept away, back to her guests, back to her performance. But Amara didn't flinch. Because the plan was already in motion. An hour later, Celeste stood at the front of the ballroom, champagne glass raised. I just want to say, she began, voice warm and loving, how grateful I am to have found a man like Victor. He's my partner, my love, my future. The crowd smiled. Some women wiped their eyes. Victor looked at her and for a moment, Amara saw the loneliness in his face. He wanted this to be real. Celeste continued. To new beginnings. Wait. The voice was quiet but firm. Eloise Hale stood from her seat near the front, fragile but fierce, 87 years old and sharp as a blade. The room went silent. "I have something to say," Eloise announced. Celeste's smile froze. "Eloise, darling, this isn't the time." "I'll decide when it's time, girl." Whispers rippled through the crowd. Victor stepped forward, concerned. "Grandmother, what's going on?" Eloise pointed directly at Celeste. "This woman," she said clearly, "is not who she pretends to be." Celeste's face drained of color, but she recovered quickly. "Eloise, you're confused. The evening has been long, maybe you should rest." "I'm sharper than you think," Eloise snapped. "And I'm not the only one who knows the truth." She turned. "Amara, come here." Every eye in the ballroom turned. Amara stepped forward from the shadows, hands trembling but feet steady. Victor's eyes widened. "Amara?" She met his gaze, then looked at Celeste. "There's something you need to hear, Mr. Hale." Her voice was quiet, but in the silent ballroom, everyone heard. She pulled out a small recording device, one Daniel had helped her retrieve from the security archives. And she pressed play. Celeste's voice filled the room, crystal clear. "The wedding is in 6 weeks. After that, the company transfers partially to me. Victor trusts me. He won't see it coming. The male voice followed. "And the forged documents?" Already signed by his lawyer. Victor's too distracted to notice. "Once we're married, we liquidate the oil contracts, sell the hotels, and disappear offshore. He'll be ruined." Then Celeste's laugh. "Cruel. Mocking. He thinks I love him. Pathetic." The room erupted. Gasps. Shouts. Chairs scraping. Celeste's face went white, then red. That's fake. She fabricated this. She's lying." But the recording continued, detailing dates, account numbers, names. Victor stood frozen, staring at Celeste like he'd never seen her before. Not with anger. With heartbreak. "Victor," Celeste reached for him. "Don't." His voice was barely a whisper. "Don't touch me." He looked at security. "Get her out." "Victor, please, let me explain." "Get her out." Celeste spun toward Amara, eyes wild with rage. "You," she hissed. "You're nothing. A maid. You think you've won? You think this changes anything?" Amara met her eyes calmly. "I didn't do this to win," she said quietly. "I did it because it was right." Security moved in. Celeste fought, screaming, threatening, but they escorted her toward the doors. The guests parted like water. And then she was gone. The ballroom emptied slowly. Whispers. Shock. Pity. Victor stood alone in the center of the floor, surrounded by decorations meant for celebration, now hollow and meaningless. Amara approached quietly. "I'm sorry you had to hear it that way," she said softly. He turned to her. Really looked at her. "You saved me," he whispered. And for the first time that night, his eyes weren't distant anymore. They were awake. 6 weeks passed. Celeste Van Doren was gone, arrested for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. Her lawyers tried to spin the story, but the evidence was too strong. The recording. The forged documents. The offshore accounts already set up in her name. The headlines ran for days. Billionaire's fiancé exposed an elaborate scheme. Victor Hale escapes financial ruin thanks to brave employee. But inside the mansion, things were quieter now. Calmer. The staff no longer walked on eggshells. There was laughter in the kitchen. Conversations in the hallways. The house felt like it could breathe again. And Amara? Victor called her into his office one morning. She stood in front of his desk, the same place where Celeste had once tried to destroy her with lies. "Sit," Victor said gently. She sat. He looked different now. Lighter. Like a weight had been lifted. "I owe you more than I can ever repay," he began. "You risked everything. Your job. Your safety. You didn't have to." "Yes, I did," Amara said simply. Victor smiled. A real smile. "I want to promote you. Estate manager. You'll oversee the household, manage the staff, make decisions. The pay is, well, it's significant. Amara's breath caught. Mr. Hale, Victor, he corrected. Please. Just Victor. She nodded slowly. Thank you. But more than that, he continued, leaning forward, I want to ask you to stay. Not just as an employee. As someone I trust. He paused, searching for words. Someone I care about. Amara's heart skipped. I know there's a gap between us, Victor said quietly. Money. Status. All of it. But none of that matters to me anymore. What matters is that you see me. The real me. Not the billionaire. Just me. She looked at him, really looked, and saw the loneliness fading. Saw something real taking its place. I see you, she whispered. And slowly, carefully, something began to grow between them. Not rushed. Not desperate. Built on respect. On honesty. On the quiet understanding that real love isn't about power or wealth. It's about seeing someone's soul and choosing to stay. A month later, Amara stood in the office of Marcus's new school. Private. Top-rated. The kind of place she'd only dreamed about. The admissions director smiled. Your brother is an excellent student. We're thrilled to have him. Amara's eyes filled with tears. She'd done it. She'd given Marcus the future he deserved. Not through silence. Not through fear. Through courage. Victor changed too. He started seeing people again. Really seeing them. He learned the names of every staff member. Asked about their families. Listened when they spoke. He donated to charities in the neighborhoods where Amara grew up. Funded scholarships. Built community centers. You did this, Amara told him one evening in the garden. No, Victor said, taking her hand. You showed me how. And Eloise? She smiled more. She sat in the library with Amara and Victor, watching them talk, watching something real and beautiful grow. One afternoon, she pulled Amara aside. You did good, child, Eloise said softly. You saved my grandson. Not just from Celeste. From himself. I just told the truth, Amara said. The truth is the hardest thing to tell, Eloise replied. Especially when it costs you everything. But you told it anyway. That's courage. She squeezed Amara's hand. And courage like that changes the world. Months later, the mansion felt different. Not because it was grander or more expensive, but because it was filled with something money couldn't buy. Honesty. Kindness. Love. Amara walked through the hallways she used to scrub, now as someone who belonged. Victor walked beside her, not as her employer, but as her equal. And the staff, Rosa, Daniel, Mrs. Palmer, all of them, watched with quiet pride. The girl who'd arrived with nothing but a suitcase and a dream had done what no one dared. She'd stood up to the monster everyone feared. She'd spoken truth when silence was safer. And she'd won. Not with anger. Not with revenge. But with quiet, unshakable dignity. The kind that changes everything. Sometimes, courage doesn't shout. Sometimes, it stands quietly. And refuses to bow. There's a moment in every person's life when they have to choose. Stay silent and stay safe. Or speak up and risk everything. Amara Cole faced that choice in a hallway outside Victor Hale's study, holding a secret that could destroy her or save a man she barely knew. She could have run. Could have packed her bags, taken her brother, and disappeared into the night. No one would have blamed her. But she didn't. Because Amara understood something that people like Celeste never could. Real strength isn't about how loud you can shout or how much fear you can create. Real strength is standing firm when the world tells you to bow. It's choosing truth when lies are easier. It's protecting someone else even when no one's protecting you. Sometimes the people who underestimate you are the ones who make you stronger. Celeste saw a poor maid from a broken neighborhood and assumed she could be broken too. She used cruelty like a weapon, believing fear would keep Amara silent. But Amara had survived poverty, loss, and raising a child when she was still a child herself. She'd learned that dignity isn't something people give you, it's something you choose to keep, no matter what they take away. Amara didn't fight Celeste with anger or revenge. She fought with dignity, with truth, with quiet, unshakable courage. And that's the kind of strength that changes everything. It changes how people see you, how you see yourself, how the world responds when you refuse to shrink. Victor Hale had everything: money, power, influence. But he was blind to the betrayal right in front of him because he'd stopped trusting his own instincts. He'd stopped seeing people clearly. Amara helped him see again. Not by being louder or richer or more powerful, but by being honest, by being brave, by refusing to let fear win. Eloise said it best: real courage isn't fearlessness. It's doing what's right even when you're terrified. Amara was terrified. Her hands shook. Her voice trembled. She knew what Celeste could take from her. But she spoke anyway. And that changed everything. For Victor. For herself. For Marcus. For every person in that mansion who'd been living under Celeste's shadow. One act of courage created a ripple that turned into a wave. So if you're facing your own Celeste, someone who tells you you're not enough, someone who uses power to make you feel small, someone who believes fear is the same as respect, remember Amara. Remember that you don't need to be the loudest person in the room to be the strongest. You just need to refuse to bow. Because quiet courage? That's the kind that lasts. That's the kind that wins. So, what did you think of Amara's story? Would you have done the same thing? Would you have risked everything to tell the truth, knowing it could cost you your job, your safety, even the people you love? Or would you have stayed silent and hoped someone else would be brave enough? There's no wrong answer. Fear is real. Consequences are real. Amara understood that better than anyone. But she also understood that some things are worth the risk. Justice. Truth. Protecting someone who can't protect themselves. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever stood up to someone everyone else feared? Have you ever been in a situation where staying silent felt safer, but speaking up felt right? I read every single comment. Your story matters. Your courage matters. And if Amara's story reminded you of someone in your life, someone who stood up when others stayed down, someone who chose dignity over comfort, share this video with them. Let them know they're not alone. Because stories like this, they're more than entertainment. They're reminders. Reminders that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. That you don't need wealth or status or power to make a difference. You just need courage. The quiet kind. The steady kind. The kind that refuses to break even when the storm is raging. If this story moved you, hit that like button. It helps more people find these incredible true stories of courage, justice, and unexpected heroes. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. We share real stories about real people who stood up, spoke out, and changed their worlds, one brave choice at a time. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Because trust me, there are more Amaras out there than you think. More people choosing courage over comfort. More quiet heroes refusing to bow. And their stories deserve to be heard. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing that one person, just one, can make all the difference. Because Amara Cole proved it. A maid with nothing but dignity and determination brought down one of the most dangerous women in the city and saved a man who'd lost hope. She didn't do it with money. She didn't do it with connections. She did it with courage. So remember this, always. Courage doesn't always shout. Sometimes it stands quietly and refuses to bow. See you in the next story. Stay brave.